Well, thanks everybody for joining today. Like she mentioned, I'm Cody Touchette, worked at Calvert Home Loans. Known Anton for almost my entire career in the business, so it's been a long time. I wanted to share with you guys some things that we're talking about with our clients and agent partners as to why the market, I think, is going to remain relatively stable long term, right? Like I think that there's going to be some ebbs and flows. There's going to be some reduction in value over the next 3, 6, 12 months, maybe. But I feel like the underlying conditions of the markets are very strong, and I think it's important to talk about those things right now. Moves forward. Selling in today's market, right? Like being a seller right now, obviously you guys know, right? Like for a long time, sellers had the stranglehold on the marketplace, and now that script has flipped like almost instantaneously, right? You guys, like for us, we felt it around Memorial. That was the feeling of when rates kind of ticked up to that 5.5%, maybe even almost 6%, and all of a sudden it was like people, like somebody turned music off and there was no more change, right? And you know, one of the things that I'm telling both our sellers and our buyers is they're in that freak out mode, especially if they haven't done it before, right? They haven't bought a house before or haven't sold a house before. They have that moment of like, oh my God, this is the worst time, terrible, and fear tends to paralyze us, right? Like you think about a deer in the headlights, right? That saying. What happens with the deer in headlights? They freeze because they're afraid, right? They're scared, they don't know what to do, and they just stop. Right? Hey, it doesn't. So that deer in the headlights moment, like you're seeing some of that in your buyers and sellers in today's market, right? So what has been working for us is some things that we've been talking about, and to help people get past that is to give some perspective, right? And so I'm going to give you guys some perspective today and some stats, but also like anecdotally in the markets, because this happened in 2018 as well. Anybody in the real estate business in 2018? Okay. The old dogs here, and there's one right there too. That guy was around in 2018. We're just talking about old dogs, and the old dog walks in. So, but this is a conversation I had with a buyer in like June of this year, where I said, hey, like I get it. Things are frothy, rates are higher, prices are still at that point we're still high. And I said, look, I think you're going to have an opportunity in the coming months to buy a house at lower price than what you would have had to pay in March. And so, yes, the rate's going to be a little higher, but we can lock in that great price now, and we can always come back and refinance down the road, right? Now, in the end, that guy with his terrible 5.25% rate looks pretty darn good right now, right? I mean, that's, considering that we're approaching 7, if not over 7 now for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. So, he was going to push pause. He was just going to stop and not look. And I told him, I was like, look, I told him about 2018, and what I said was, people that were able to buy in 2018 when the rates got high, prices dipped significantly very fast, and they were able to get great deals. And then you look forward from 2018, since we don't have to have a crystal ball to go back to 2018 and look forward to today, right? You bought a house in 18 at a discounted price. By 21, 22, you had doubled in value, right? And that's an amazing change for somebody's family's net worth and value. And so, we had that conversation. I said, don't rush out and buy a house tomorrow because I told you this, but don't stop looking entirely, right? Maybe don't burn every Saturday and Sunday at open houses and looking for houses for 4 hours a day, because I've done that and it's exhausting. But just, keep your radar up, like see what's out there. Literally the next day, oh my God, this house came up. We would have had to pay $850 for it in March, and I can get it at $7 at this price. Right? So he got in his mind, he got $150,000 discount to the house. Yeah, he paid 5.25% in rate instead of 3.25% when we started looking, but it was a huge savings on the price. And now again, we think mortgage rates will probably be back down into the mid-4s somewhere next year, right? Because the Fed is going to tame inflation, we're going to get it down. So one of the things that we can offer for sellers, right, if they're in a sticky spot, this was huge for about 6 months. Because we got it a little late in the game. Now, if you have a buyer, they probably can write a contingent offer, right? So if there's a case where you can, and we operate in a lot of states, and so there are places where there's still multiple offers happening, right? There's still places where homes are selling over this price. So this is our Zoom Casa partnership. Basically, what it allows your clients to do is be able to buy without selling, and then they come back and sell later. So Zoom Casa actually buys the house up front from the client. They do charge an extra real estate commission, like They charge 3% for the service. But what they will do is they'll help your buyer get moving. So sometimes clients, even if they could write a contingent offer, it's not going to be a good fit for them because they've got horses and dogs and they need to do some work or whatever, right? Whatever reason they need to get out of the house or they need to get moved into the next house first, then come back and do some fix up and put on the market. This program will allow for it. They typically go up to 80% loan to value. I have seen some reductions on that as of recent. They're wanting to maybe cap it at 75% loan to value. So great, it's a great product that can be very useful. In our market, in this area, you're probably going to be able to get a contingent offer accepted most times. So it's a useful product inside of a market where we need to be able to sell maybe before we buy. Right? So they have two products. One's called, oh, this is an example, right? So client has $1 million house. They've got $400,000 in mortgage. They want to buy a new house at 1.5. They need 20% down, so they need 300 grand. If they don't sell their house contingent, they don't have down payment, right? This program basically gives them some money, right? So they're going to unlock 75% of the $1 million value, $750. They're going to pay off the mortgage, and then they're going to give them the net proceeds of $350-ish, right? Then you as their agent, you're not cut out of this transaction, right? You get to then, once they're out of the old house, into the new one, settled, squared away, ready to list, you come back and list it, right? They list it, and this was in a little different time where you sell for 100 grand, 10% over list price, right? Maybe not today, I don't know. But example, then you get to come back and sell that house for what it's worth, right? So maybe today it's 950, maybe 6 months ago it was 1.1. We got this math built on a little bit of an increase, right? So then they pay regular commissions. This is the program fee, right? So it's 3%. Then they pay back the loan advance, the 750, and then the borrowers get their funds, right? They get the rest of the funds. Our programs that we have on this mortgage they've got, we can also do what's called a recast. Anybody heard of a recast? You know what that is? Okay. So let's say they said, well, geez, I don't really want a $1.2 million mortgage, but that's all I have money for. But in the end, they're going to have an extra couple hundred grand. We get to take that couple hundred grand and apply it to the mortgage and recalculate their payment based on their existing terms. So we call it a recast, not a refinance, because we're not refinancing the mortgage. We don't have any interest rate risk. We don't have any real closing costs, right? That program fee is like $200, like very, very cheap. So they can rewrite the mortgage down to the lower amount, thus giving them a lower payment. And right now, 200 grand is probably about $1,300 off the payment. So that's a pretty good savings. If this payment on this loan wasn't exactly where they wanted to be, that could be a big help. So they also have a cash buyer program. The cash buyer program hasn't worked out as well as it worked out in theory. So the idea behind this program is we give them a pre-approval letter as if they were a cash buyer, and Zoom Casa then buys the house for them, and then they come back and then they sell their house and then they buy it from Zoom Casa. They thought they could get around double excise tax, and apparently they can't. So not only does it cost a program fee of 3%, but it also costs another 1.7, almost 2% in some cases, right? So an extra 1.5 to 2% depending on the price point. So that one's not as popular as we thought. Qualifying without selling, right? So this is Zoom Casa is one way to get going on that, right? Also, if somebody's got, like we're seeing this a lot, right? Past clients come to us and say, hey, we want to buy a new house, but this house I have, I owe 400 grand on it, and I owe my mortgage rate is 2.75. What do I do? Do I sell that house? Do I keep it? Do I rent it? Like, what do we do? So they can absolutely keep it rented. I know you guys want to sell it, but if it's the right thing for them and we want to help them grow their value and eventually you'll end up selling it maybe at 1031 exchange later, when rates come back down, keeping that house and renting it out is a great solution for the right buyer. The difference is then they have to come up with their down payment, right? Because they haven't sold their house. They have to come up with their down payment. And they have to be able to qualify with that mortgage net of rent as well as the new mortgage. So example is that they've got a $400,000 house at 2.75, their payment's $5, right? So very, very affordable. Just kidding, it's probably like 22 or 23. But if they could rent that house for $3 grand a month, they're cash flow positive, right? And so we get to count that $3,000 a month in rent right away, as long as they have a signed lease, first and last deposit by closing. They don't have to have moved out before we close. They just have to have a signed lease and something. So The reason why the first last deposit is there is because people were so now you have to have somebody that's actually backing that lease. So that's a great way to be able to qualify without selling. Some people don't even need that, right? If they really make great money and they're, they can afford both payments, then we don't even worry about that. Just let's see, ARMs, topic du jour. Everybody wants to, like, when people see the rate, they're like, you got an ARM, like, could I take a 7-1 ARM, right? The interesting thing about ARMs though is the yield curve. You guys have probably heard this, right? So right now what that means is a shorter term loan has a worse rate of return than a long term, right? You think about it as a CD, right? You're gonna drop, let's say your grandma wants to buy you a $100 CD at the bank, right? You're gonna get like 0.2% on that right now, right? Very, very little. And you'd think, okay, well, grandma's willing to put that money away for a year. She's gonna get, let's just call it 1%. She's gonna get 1% for 2 years, or for 1 year. If she goes and gets a longer term loan, that would typically yield a better rate of return, right? That's the way that when we think about that. So in the mortgage world, if you're locking up for a 30-year window of time, we want a higher rate of interest because we're locking that up for a long period of time. So typically an ARM, or an adjustable rate mortgage, would have a lower rate of interest because as a lender, we want to have some variability. Because at the end of a term of a loan or an ARM loan, that ARM will adjust to the market rate plus a margin. So that allows us to actually participate in the market change. Right now, ARMs are actually priced at or higher than a 30-year fixed in a lot of cases. So ARMs are not actually super useful in today's market to be able to lower the cost of qualification. Also, on a 5-1 ARM, you have to qualify at the note rate plus 2%, which doesn't help qualification at all, right? A 7-year ARM, though, you do qualify at the note. So typically a 7-year ARM would be a 0.5 to 0.75% better than a 30-year fixed. The yield curve wasn't all jacked up. Yes, sir.
Approximately how long do you think the yield curve will stay that way? When do you think ARMs will be?
Yeah, so the yield curve inverting is a telltale sign of a recession, right? And arguably, I don't know, we are in a recession, right? The government might argue with us right now because they want to get reelected, but we're in a recession, right? Like we have 2 negative quarters GDP, the yield curve's inverted. There's so many signs that say that we're in a recession. When we start to come out of that, that's when it's right. So when long-term rates come down, economy starts to grow on its own again, or Fed-induced growth, then you'll see that yield curve come out of that. Make sense? Okay, cool. Interest only. This was our gateway drug to negative ARMs back in the good old days, right? So interest only can be really good though, right? Like, and here's the explanation of what interest only is, right? So on a regular amortizing loan, if I borrow $100,000 and my interest rate's 6%, I'm going to get a payment that's $1,000 a month, let's say. In that $1,000 a month, the 200 of that is going to principal, right? So every month I'm putting a couple more dollars towards principal. So my loan slowly goes down over time, and there comes a point in time about 20 years down the road where I start to actually pay more principal than I'm paying interest, and then the balance goes down very fast, right? That's the principle of amortization. In an interest-only loan, there's no principal payment. So on that loan, like let's say my payment was $1,000 on my $100,000 loan, and 200 was principal. Now my payment's $800 because I don't have to pay that $200 per month. Now I have the capability. There's no prepayment penalty. I can absolutely pay $200, $300, $400 a month. Where interest only was born was for folks like us, right? Commission folks, where some months are great, some months are stinky, and you can catch up that interest only when you have a big month and you have some commission, but you get a lower payment to help you in the times where problem is that it relates them to everybody, right? You don't have to be self-employed to get it. Anybody can get an interest loan. And so in the before the crash, right, 2003, 4, 5, interest only became very big, right? Everybody loved interest only. That was their payment, right? They didn't think about the payment, the principal piece, because home prices always go up, and I'm sure to make more money in the future. Of course, right? Yeah, home prices had always gone up for quite some time. So the reason I say it was a gateway drug to neg am. Anybody know what a neg am option arm is? Okay, I know one guy, and I know what they are. So remember how we talked about principal and the balance slowly going down over time? And then we talked about interest only, where the balance remains the same for that period of time. Well, negative amortization means your balance goes up because you're not even making the minimum payment. I'd be like paying the minimum payment on your credit card with a $10,000 balance and your minimum payment is $50, but the interest charged is $250. So if you owe 10 grand, now you owe 10 grand 200, but you only had a $50 payment. Sounds awesome, right? Keep doing that, keep doing that, keep doing that. Pretty soon, 3 years later, on the mortgage, you owe 30 grand more than you started with. And if home values only go up, who cares, right? It's great. It'll work out. It always works out until values don't go up. Values go down. And then people mail their keys off to the bank, right? And they say, take this house, I don't want it, right? So interest only was the gateway drug to the option on it because it was our slow step in, right? Interest only can be very powerful for the right folks at the right time. If somebody does have a real possibility of making a pile more money in the next couple of years, then interest only loan can be good because maybe they catch it up. If they're like us and they make commission and they have a month where they don't make any commission, it's very nice to have a low payment and then be able to catch it up down the road. You get in trouble with interest only if you just think that's my payment and you never know. Make sense? It will help people afford homes in this market, right? And so we do offer, we offer that on adjustable rate mortgages. We offer it on 30-year fixed rate mortgages. We have a new investor product out, a 40-year loan, 10-year interest only, 30-year amortization after. You might think, oh my God, that sounds terrible. What are you guys doing? That's subprime. No. And the reason why it's a 40-year mortgage is because if you go with a 30-year mortgage and 10 years is interest only, you make 10 years worth of interest only payments. At the end of 10 years, it's amortizing. And it's amortizing over a much shorter period of time. Right now, you got a 20-year mortgage instead of a 30-year mortgage. So the 40-year actually is a great product because then you don't have as much payment shock when it comes time to make interest. I hear your ears crying.
I love it.
You love it.
What are we gonna pay over? How much would that be today?
Well, over a standard loan, you're probably paying an extra 0.3% for that.
25% down.
You could do 20% down single family, 25% down. But like on a $100,000 loan, it's only 200 grand. But on an $800,000 loan, right, it might make the difference on a fourplex of does it cash flow today or does it not cash flow today? And if we think rates are coming down, we'll take care of that later. We also think if rates don't come down, what do you think rent rates will do? They'll go up, right? Because that means there's less buyers, there's more renters. If there's more renters, more people willing to pay higher prices. Okay, so I mentioned inflation, and inflation is the enemy of bond traders. And bond traders are who sets mortgage rates, right? You guys know the Fed doesn't set mortgage rates, right? Now they influence them with buying mortgage-backed securities or cutting or lower the Fed funds rate. But really, this is the thing that affects our mortgages. And think about it from like, I'm going to lend you some money, right? Let's say you want to borrow $100. And I say, cool, I'll lend you $100. Inflation's at 2%, right? Fed funds target. Not there today, but let's say that's where it's at. If inflation's 2%, that means if I didn't lend you $100, at the end of the year, I'd have $98. You guys understand how that works, right? My $100 doesn't spend the same at the end of the year if inflation is 2%. So if I lend you $100 and I charge you 6% for it, then I make 4%, right? Because I made 6, but I lost 2. Sounds good, right? Now picture yourself a mortgage lender not lending $100, lending hundreds of billions of dollars, and I'm lending that money to you at 6.5% on a 30-year fixed, and inflation's at 8.3. I'm losing money. I'm in business to lose money. I'm not happy with that. And you're like 6.5. Get you. I'm not going to, right? I don't want to borrow that money. I don't really want to lend you that money at 6.5 either. But it's better than losing 8.3, right? So I'm losing money. It's not good. So that's why we see mortgage rates continue to rise, because the Fed is not doing what they have not got inflation under control. I think they're doing the right things, and arguably they've probably already overdone it, but it hasn't worked so far. And here's why, right? These are the numbers that we're rolling off. So the way they measure inflation, they get a monthly number and they stack them all up over the last 12 months, and that's the number. And so we're looking here at the core CPI. So this strips out volatile food and energy prices, because none of us have to buy food or energy, right? So the CPI number makes a lot of sense. I digress. Okay, so we look at the July number. It was last year, it was 0.3. We rolled on a 0.3, so no real change. August, though, was 0.2. August this year, 0.6. So you can see inflation rose 0.4%, even though in the face of Fed raising interest rates 3% this year, right? So it hasn't worked yet. September, we've got a 0.3. We roll in another 0.5 or 0.6 in September, inflation will probably rise again. Not good for bonds. Bond traders see this coming, they know it's coming. So this is not going to be a great month for us. Now, October is a 0.6. If we roll that 0.6 off, and let's say the Fed is doing the right thing and they do actually impact inflation and it comes down, and we roll off a 0.6 and we roll on a 0.3, we're in the right direction. We get a couple of 0.3s or 0.2s in a row. By January, we could see inflation down 1 to 2% from where it's at today. That would be monster. Right? If you believe Kathy Woods, it might be a negative number. She is doom and gloom on the deflation, right? So inflation, stuff costs more. Deflation, price negative price growth, right? The Fed does not want negative price growth, except for in our business. I think they want home prices. So you can see them. We're rolling off these numbers. We're rolling on hopefully more numbers like these. By mid-year next year, I think you could see this number probably at the 3.5% mark. And that would be really good for us, because again, back to my analogy, if inflation's this is core, right? So the full inflation is like 8.1. Is that where we're at right now? 8.1. So if this is 8.1 and we go down to 3.5, that means the regular may be 4. So if I'm lending money at 6.5%, 7%, and inflation's at 8, now inflation's at 4, where do you think I'm going to be? 5, 5.5, maybe, right? Somewhere in that ballpark. And it's probably going to keep going down. It might even go down, down, down. Then rates go down, 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 right? So this is, I think, our unique opportunity to help our clients buy homes at discounted prices, with crappy interest rates that we're going to refinance. And this is why I think we're going to be able to refinance. Okay. All right, real quick, questions. Okay. Anybody on Zoom have a question?
No.
Fair enough. Okay.
I'm just
okay.
recording you.
So,
for
okay,
later.
cool.
For later.
Hello, recording. So I mentioned to you why I think the underlying market is still strong. Okay. So this is a graph of number of homes we've built by decade. And you can see for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years in a row, we built more than 20 million homes. And in the decade from 2000 to 2009, we built 27 million homes in the US. Okay. What happened in that decade? In the decade between 20 and 29, or 20 and 2009? Recession, housing crash, yeah, all those things. What happened to builders in 2007, 8, 9? They went out of business. They got foreclosed on, they had short sales, they lost flats. You know who was not developing land? Everybody was not developing land, right? That was the moment in time where the wheels just ground to a halt. So the following decade, 2010 to 2019, we built less than 6 million. Right? So is that a big difference? 20 million home difference. Right? Now, arguably, maybe we were getting a little oversupplied. A little. Not monster, but a little, right? So 20 million fewer homes in one decade. So who's going to buy all these houses, right? So the two main factors that are supply and demand from an actual housing standpoint, without regard to interest rate for the moment, are how many people are out there, like how many households are out there, and how many houses do we have available, and how many houses we built. So from 2010 to 2020, we built 20 million fewer homes, right? This is household creations. And if I can get my head out of the way, from 2010, we had about 110 million households in the US. 2021, we are at 128. So we added 18 million homes in that span of time where we built 20 million fewer homes. So we have a housing shortage? Absolutely. Absolutely. Right? Another thing to add to this is we've got all these folks that we just refinanced into sub 3% interest rate. How often do those guys want to get rid of their mortgage? Never, right? Do you think many of those homes will hit the market soon or not many? Right? It's going to be very few of them, right? So again, we're talking about these things with our clients. They don't know this stuff, right? They don't think about it on the 10,000 foot level like we do. So the fact is that we've not built enough homes to meet demand of the number of households we've added to the country. So there is a housing shortage. May not feel like it right now because of the interest rates and the people are, deer in the headlights. They're afraid right now. But I believe that the underlying housing market is still going to be very strong going into the next few years. Okay, so this rate bubble will burst when there's a famous saying too: "Don't fight the Fed," and the Fed is hell bent on getting inflation back to 2%, and they will do it. I don't know if it'll be tomorrow or 5 years from now or 2 years from now, but it will probably be in the next year to 18 months. And when they do, you'll see interest rates back in the mid to low 4s, right? Because the mortgage company is fine making 2%. When inflation's at 2%, we're going to charge 4% for a mortgage. Okay, so this is those are the two graphs, and I brought you guys copies of them. Introduce those into your buyer presentation, your seller presentation. Help your folks know that there's a lot of support in the housing. This is the follow-up to that stat. So those numbers, the housing numbers stopped in 2019, and then the household formations, I think, went to 21. But from 19 to 21, there was not a state in the nation that added more housing units than they added households. Okay, so that trend continues. And I mean, think about it, right? What happened in late 2019 or early 2020? COVID, right? Did we build a lot of houses in COVID? No, right? I was trying to build a house in COVID. They stopped for 3 months, right? Nobody swung any hammers, couldn't get concrete, couldn't get insulation, wood tripled, quadrupled, quintupled. I just heard that wood is like lumber is back down to pre-COVID. Yeah, that's pretty great, right? So maybe we get swinging the hammers again, right? But the fact is also during that window of time, we weren't doing a whole lot of development because what was shut down? All the planning departments, right? Like nobody was working. So we're still a ways behind, and this stat shows that there's not been any state in the whole nation that's caught up on the housing. Okay, go ahead.
Question?
Yeah.
So you're saying that means that it's not just this area that is not going to crash, the whole nation. So when we're telling people, here's why we're not going to crash, it doesn't really matter where we're at. We're still talking.
That is nationwide. Yeah, those are national stats. Now, there are areas of the country that only went up 3 or 4% over the last 4 or 5 years. So they're not going to have the same correction, right? And I guess what I would say is, like, I don't like the word crash, right? Because it's got a little big negative connotation. I do feel like we're in for correction. We've already seen it, right? Prices dropped about 10%. I think we could see another 10, maybe even 15. The question though is like, when do I buy? Well, I don't know, right? I've got buyers that are very particular, and there's only one house every 3 months that comes on the market they want. Should they wait if the perfect house comes on and they're very picky and they've got a really tight window? No, they should take advantage of where things are at right now. If you're in a marketplace or a market area where there's 5 houses a week that come on available, yeah, you probably could roll the dice a little bit more, right? The problem is there's a saying about catching a falling knife, right? So like it's dangerous, right? The house values are probably going to go down for a while longer. The question is, where do we buy? Because I think what we're doing is we're building in a rubber band, right? We're pulling back because people are like, oh, I don't want to buy, I'm scared. And there's more people are adding into this catapult, if you will. They're like, well, I'd like to buy a house, but rates suck. I'd like to buy a house, but prices are too high. I'd like to buy a house, but blah, blah, blah. And we're adding pre-approved buyers every single day to our catapult. And eventually there's going to be something that happens in the marketplace where it's going to let loose, and those people are going to shoot in the market, right? And then we're going to see home values go up, right? So you don't want to be like, you don't want to wait for this and miss it and buy here, right? When you could buy, anywhere, right? So, and what I would tell people too, our investor clients, I say, rising tide lifts all boats, right? So if you have the capability of buying 5 houses the next year, buy one today, wait 2 months. Buy one today, buy one then, wait 2 months. Buy one then, wait 2 months. Because then you're dollar cost averaging a home, right? Most people can dollar cost average a stock because they're $100. But most people don't dollar cost average on several $100,000 homes. But if you have a client that has the means, it's great advice. Okay, so interest rates. This is from the 22nd, and literally it's 7%. Right? This survey is not out yet. They only do it once a week. That will say 7% by Thursday. Right? So this is really even shot up even more. But I'd like to show this stat, right? Because this is the funny thing is that 5 on this, totally not. possible. I don't know where that's coming from. But look at the 30-year fixed. I think that's the most important part. The 30-year fixed, this is the last 10 years worth of interest rates. So we look at this, we're like, we're at a 10-year high for interest rates. Should I buy a house? No, that seems like a terrible idea. But yeah, we are at a 10-year high for interest rates. Now, how do you feel about 6.25%? Right? So this is the last 10 years. The only time we've been below 5% is in the last 10 or 12 years. Okay? Well, again, perspective, right? Your words of home buying age in 2011, you don't recall that rates were in the 5s and 6s, right? I got in the mortgage business here when rates were 7.5%, 8%, right? We were still buying houses, we were still selling houses. If you take out the last 10 years and look at the previous 20, 92 to 2012, we spent most of our time between 5 and 10%. So is 6.25 bad? Not historically. Compared to the last 10 years, yes. But what happened in the last 10 years, right? Housing crash. Once in probably a generation, maybe more than that, once every other generation, housing crash. What happened here? Once in a millennia of global event, worldwide pandemic, right? So we had two big events that pushed interest rates into the 2s. You will not see them again. I don't think we'll see 2% anything again in our life, right? So don't let your clients wait around for 2% rates, right? It's not coming back. This is probably more normal. This is the trajectory we're on right now. I hope that doesn't happen, right? I really hope that doesn't happen. But it might, right? And again, people still bought houses when interest rates were 18%. Guess what? For us lenders, man, oh man, this was a fun run, right? We were refinancing people every couple of years. I just chunked down from 18 to 15, 15 to 12, 12 to 10. Oh my gosh, single digit interest rates, right? I remember my parents went pop the bottle when they got a 9% interest rate on their mortgage because they came from 18, right? Pretty spectacular, right? You guys you gotta have the frame of reference. You gotta have the perspective. What I will tell you though too is you can kind of see it. They're really like these little gray bars. You see the gray bar here?
Oh yeah.
Here. Those are recessions. Okay, and so if I got one more, I can send it to you guys. But every time we entered a recession, so when we ended a recession, rates were lower at the end of the recession than they were when we started. Okay, and so I mean, arguably, I don't know when we started this recession, right? It was January, it was March, I don't know. But if that holds true, right, and this was an interesting market we've ridden for the last 50 years, but if that was true and interest rates on the entrance to this recession were 3.5, the history would tell us that we're going to be below 3.5 when we exit the recession. Now, I don't know if that's the case. Maybe this will be the one that breaks that trend, but every single one of those recessions, we finished at a lower rate than when we started the recession. Now, I think there will be, if we are in a recession. Interest rates will
It's a true statement.
Can go up during, right? Like here they went up during the recession, but they came back down. And they, I guess this was the point and that was the point. So that one wasn't a big one, but like this one was huge. And this one was a big drop, right? And this one was a big drop. We even had a recession at the start of COVID, right? That we were in a recession when COVID happened, and obviously rates tanked from there. So when clients ask, well, geez, the recession, what should I do, right? Home prices typically remain relatively stable in a recession, save the one that we caused. I'll bet that for the housing crash in 2006. Mortgage guys on Wall Street were complicit in that. Every other recession, home prices remained stable or went up. Every recession, interest rates came down during that recession. So these are stats, these are talking points, these are things you guys can bring to your clients, both seller and buy side, to help them feel good about buying houses. I start with this one and like just elf in the room. Yeah, rates are worse than they have, no doubt about it. But then I show them this one, and then I show them the next one, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't know." Because they don't know, right? If you're, first-time home buyers, you're sub 30 years old most of the time right now, right? They don't know. 30 years ago, it's right here. So, like, do you remember where rates were at when you were 0 years old? No, of course not, right? You don't have any frame of reference from then. You probably don't even remember what they were like when you were 10 or 15, right? But a lot of people will remember 2006, right? Your millennial buyers, your first-time home buyers, they're gonna remember 2006. You might have had a parent last time, right? Right, yeah. But, and you know, the thing is, like, they might, because maybe there was some trauma, right? And so you have to get over that, right? And that doesn't happen regularly, and these graphs will help you show your concept, right? That's not a regular occurrence. And especially now with home prices starting to dip, if you're on TikTok at all, there's lots of doom and gloom. You know, there's a lot of people out there saying a lot of things, and the fact is that I've given you some stats of why the underlying housing market I think is strong, and I think it will continue. We're gonna have this will be an opportunity over the next. You know, I think it's gonna be 3 to 9 months. It's gonna be.
Hi, my name's Ashton. I'm a real estate agent with the Anton Stetner Real Estate Solutions Group. The first couple pages in the packet that's in front of you has some stats and some graphs. So this is over the last 3 years. You know, he was talking about how the market is very stable. And even though we've seen a lot of insanity over the past couple of years with COVID and the volatility of the housing market, if we look at it in the past 3 years, going back to 2019, our numbers are actually very much the same now as they were in 2019. So the first one is homes for sale. So in July of 2019, there were just under 1,800 homes in Snohomish County that were for sale. Today, there's just under 1,700 homes for sale. So we have this huge spike in availability homes. Down here, during the crazy insanity of COVID, there was only, at one point, there was only 150 homes for sale in all of Snohomish County. So that's when we had those like crazy 25 buyers competing over the same house. Simply wasn't enough available for the buyers. Now we're seeing an increase in the available homes. So we're seeing the same kind of market that we had pre-COVID. Does that make sense? Next one, we're looking at average days on market. Again, you see from 2021 till about April of 2022, when we had that insanity of COVID and low interest rates impacting the housing market. We had crazy bidding wars. And so we had 5 to 7 days on market as a average. And honestly, that's probably only because of review dates. Otherwise, it would have been like 2 days on the market would be the average.
8 seconds. So riding a bull.
Now we're up to 21 days on market as an average, which for this time last year was about 22 days on market as an average. So again, we're very similar to pre-COVID.
Can I interrupt you 1 second on that?
Yes.
The news story here is time on market triples,
Yes, of course.
right?
Yeah.
That's the headline.
That's the clickbait headline. That's garbage. Show your people this. Like what we're doing is we're turning to normal.
Yeah.
And as a buyer, you kind of want that, right? Because this sucked as a buyer, right? It was
These are
terrible.
super stressful on sellers.
Yeah.
Just the level
I have to
of
review
stress.
30 offers. How do I do that, right? Yeah, exactly. But keep in mind what the headline is, right? Because the headline sells, and it's got to be scandalous. This is not. It is a tripling of time on market, or yeah, time on market. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But again, it's going back to.
No, totally right. It's a lot of agents are headlines and everything are using a lot of fear tactics. Like, oh my gosh, there's more homes, there's more competition. There's not going to be as many buyers for your house. Well, yeah, that's sort of true, but it's just because we just came out of this crazy, insane market. That was not normal. Can't expect that. Average percent of last original list price. Again, you can see these crazy peaks during the bidding wars. We were selling homes for 112% over list. That's insane.
The good old days of the seller.
That really peaked in March of 2022. So if you're considering selling, I sorry, that was 6 months ago. And any homes that we are going to try and run as comparable, we can't run it off that kind of value. You can't expect to get way over this pricing. Historically, it's right now just under 96%. And around this time in 2019, before COVID and all of that insanity, it was around 96, 97% of this price. And around this time in 2019, before COVID and all of that insanity, it was around 96, 97% of this price. Back to what the market looked like. So sellers are, it's hard as agents, you have to coach your sellers a little bit more because they're thinking about what their friend did 6 months ago when they got 15 offers on their house, $55,000 over asking, and got to give up all of their contingencies and everything. That's right. Okay. Sellers need to be prepared to negotiate more. Last one, the average sales price. This is the one that's exciting, right? Because if we look in 2019 versus today, yes, we just dropped. We lost a lot of money with those bidding wars going on. I know, it's painful, it sucks. But if we look back to 2019, we still gained $250,000 in the average home price. That's awesome. I know. She lost $75,000. The friend told you that the market was going to change. Sorry, that hurts. But you still have $250,000 in equity for the average home. That's awesome. Also, I wanted to point out in the past 7 days in Snohomish County alone, there have been 271 price reductions and only 244 homes sold. So more sellers had to go and do a price drop than sellers that got to go woo and put a sold sign. So it's super important that as agents, you guys are really talking hard to your clients about pricing it correctly. And as sellers, that you are looking at the information that your agents are putting to you and saying, okay, I'm not going to price my home the way it could have been in March or April. I'm going to price it according to what it needs to be now. Otherwise, we're going to do price drops. And if prices continue to drop at this crazy rate, that means you're going to have to do price drop, and you're going to be chasing a ball that's rolling downhill. You're going to lose money on the sale of that. So you need to be able to price aggressively. Talk about making sure that we are pricing according to today's market and we're not pricing according to March's market.
All right, thanks, Ashton. Hello, my name is Ricky. I'm also on Anton's team. I'm on Anton for quite a while. Anton was my mentor, got me into real estate. So what I'm going to talk to you guys about right now is what we're doing on both the buyer and the seller side to help both clients get the best deal, right? So as a seller wants to get the most amount of money for their house, and as a buyer, you want to pay the least amount of money for your house, right? Pretty self-explanatory. So if you flip to the page in your packet there, looks like most of you guys are already on it, the comparative market analysis. I ran this data for just 3 days. You can see I just printed this out yesterday, and I printed it out today. Ran the information yesterday, but I only ran the data for the last 3 days. I used specific criteria: 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,400 square foot house within the last 3 days. So you can see there at the top, there's the active properties. In the middle there, it shows the pending properties, and in the bottom there, it shows the sold properties. You see there's a lot more that are active right now than you see that are pending and that are sold. That wasn't the case a few months ago. You would typically see a lot more sold and pending, or probably a lot more pending than you would actually active, right? And then so right here across the middle of the page, you can see that there's kind of a high, low, and a median home price that we're using to gauge where is it a good price to start with negotiations and where you want to list your house or how much you want to pay for a house that's already listed. Okay, and so the reason why I want to show you that is because if you're a buyer and you're looking on the market and you see a house at $700,000, it does not mean that you have to go and offer $700,000. 5 months ago, you had to go in and offer $800,000. Now, there's a lot more room in negotiation if you're paying attention to what is active, because active is your competition, right? So when we do a market analysis, what we're checking for is if you flip to the next page there, it shows you right there in the middle, comparable homes that are currently for sale. That's your competition. That is the active portion of this page. The next thing is comparable homes that were recently sold. What people have already paid for homes. It's really difficult to use that data now just because people bought homes when things were going up and there was a whole lot of buyers and not a lot of inventory. And now people the prices are going down and there's not as many buyers because of buyer fatigue, because of interest rates, because of pricing, things like that. So those categories, what people have already paid, is going to be down there to the sold portion. And the next is homes that failed to sell. Right, this is what people wouldn't pay for. Okay, so if you notice out here in the active parts, look at the current days on market. It's the third column from the right. And if you look at the current days on market, you can see these things range from anywhere from 5 to, it looks like the highest is 186 days. Okay? That was not really a thing a few months ago. They were not out there for that many days. This one apparently did, right? So if you look at down here, the one that was on the market for 186 days, you see that it started out at 800,000 and is now listed for 725. That's kind of the rolling down the hill effect that Ashton was talking about. And this house is still sitting there. It's still not caught up to where the market is at right now. Right? So this person is just not going to sell the house. The person's probably sitting on their couch and like, dang, it's crazy causing them not to sell the house. It's not true. The reason why this house is not selling is it's not priced for the market that we're in. It may have been priced correctly for the market that they were in when they thought about selling the house. When they got in, they either chose the wrong agent, it didn't help them identify the correct way to price their home, or they had a necessity for that amount, and there was no way they were putting their house on the market. And now they're chasing the ball down.
They were even on the market. 180 days was March.
And
They
so,
hit it just right, but they didn't.
This is really unique property that's right.
And some of the things, it's funny here, because if you look on the actives, this one here is showing 7 days on the market. 6 months ago, if that was there, you were asking what was wrong with the house. 7 days on the market, what's wrong? I don't know. Okay, so flip to just past the page where it shows market analysis explanation. There's a little triangle. Since you guys have a triangle in front of you, I'm only going to draw one side of this because you guys can kind of see where we're at there. So just to put some numbers to perspective here, 500,000 just for the overall, just for numbers, because I suck at math and I want this to be easy. I want you guys to understand. If you're looking at those percentages here, this is 10% higher than the median price. This is 15% higher than the median price. Here we have 10% lower than the median price and 15% lower than the median price. Now, I wrote a couple of notes on my paper here to go over this, but this is where sellers are at. This is where sellers think that they want to sell their house, right? Because their neighbor did it 6 months ago, and they think they're like, you know what? I know that I can get this much on my house because my house is better than my neighbor, and my neighbor got that. That's great. That was before the market started going in a downward spiral. Okay. So if you were to list your house at this right now, because this is what you need to get out of your house, or because this is what your agent is telling you that you can get in order to buy your business, you're just going to start falling off right here, and it's just not really going to go well for you. You're going to start chasing that ball and stuff. Okay, you're also limiting yourself to only 10% of the buyers that are actually out there, because most of the people that are out there, they're either priced out of the market because of interest rates, where they have a whole lot of cash. Most people have a whole lot of cash, very small pool of people. So you are not advertising to the most amount of people if you're pricing your house this far above listing, just because your neighbor did it and they had that audience. The same thing could be said for right here, right? So we could talk you down just a little bit, right? Go down to 5% and just still come in just a little bit above market, just because you want to see, right? You want to check if the market's going to help you get the money out of your house that you think it's worth, right? So you made a couple of renovations, painted it, you put new sinks in the bathroom, put new countertops in the kitchen, so you know your house is worth that, right? There's a big price involved because you're still above the median price. The median price, you still only have about 60% of the buyers that are out there looking, right? Because let's face it, there's about 40% of the population just in Snohomish County that can't afford a home, period. They can't afford the interest rates, they don't have the down payment, they can't go out and get a loan for $500,000. So you already are missing a lot of your buyer pool just on that nature. Then with the remaining 60% out there, if the good agents are listing their homes 10 and 15% below market value, where do you think the buyers are going? They're going right down there, right? So pricing your house at the median is probably going to allow you to sell your home in the average days on market, which right now is somewhere around the 30 day, 29 days, 21 days. So if you list your home at market value, you're probably going to sell that in 21 days at market price. Maybe you'll get an offer that's a little bit below that. Maybe it's only 5% lower than asking, but you're in a good spot because you have 60% of the buyers out there. If you come out from the gate swinging and you're ready to sell your house because you just got a job and you need to be somewhere for that job by December, your house has to sell, then you might want to think about coming in 15% below market value to ensure that your house sells rather than 21 days, your house sells in 6 days. Can't guarantee you it's going to sell in 6 days, but you're going to have a whole lot better chance because you have about 80% of your buyer pool right here now versus your 60% buyer pool. So mathematically speaking, you have way more buyers at 50% below price. Now granted, that's a huge difference right there, right? That's a huge pill to swallow. But remember, this price is still higher than it was in 2019, right? I paid for my house that I'm currently living in, I paid $375 for it in 2019, and it's worth about $550 now. 6 months ago, I probably could have got $650 for it, maybe $700 based off of some of the houses that we listed, right? So yeah, that would have been really nice, but I missed that bus. That bus is not coming back for me, at least not anytime soon. I still need to be happy with that $550. Yes, sir.
I think maybe one thing to add to your stats perspective, the number sounds crazy. You don't have to even, you're just slightly below the median. What happens is the same thing that just happened to Elias. You're still seeing bidding wars because of low inventory. So I don't know that we have to go even that much, but if you're like just slightly below, in other words, better value, that's what's still creating bidding wars. How many showings does that property have? And then they thought there's bidding wars on it? 6. In 1 day. In 1 day. Yeah.
And a review date too.
And a review date, which that's completely abnormal. Yet the property was price aggressive, it was clean, everyone loved it.
All right, go ahead and flip to your next page. Thank you, Anton. This next graph just kind of showing you after days on the market, after weeks on the market, where your buyer pool comes out of, right? So this is where the chasing the ball down the hill goes. So if you go back and you look at that triangle where we were at, right? This is that median price right here, where if you mark your listing price right there, it's going to help you sell when you have the most amount of buyers, because all of these is that 60 and 80% buyers that you have out there in the market. Okay, so anywhere in here, you're going to be good. Your house is going to sell with the market. If you start going up above here, what you're going to do, if you're at 10% above list price because you just want to see if you get your money back for those countertops, you're going to start falling with this, right? And what's going to happen is that your agent that you chose is going to recommend a price change at, let's just say, week 3. They're going to recommend a price change right here. Well, right here, if you remember, we were at 550. And now down here, we are we're below 425, which is what originally you might have been able to sell your house for in a week if you would have marked it at 425 to begin with. Guess what? Now we're asking you to mark your house to 425. You can't sell it because your buyers are still way down here because of the time on market. They don't see this. MLS isn't showing it to them. Their agent is sending them new listings that are coming on the market. They're not sending them this information anymore, and you're going to miss out on those folks. So if you're a buyer, go back and look at those listings that have been on the market for 30 days. Go back and look at the ones that have been on the market for 60 days. There's value in those, and even though it's marked right here at 425, that buyer or that seller is getting real desperate, hopefully, and you might be able to even come in lower than that. That's where you're going to find it really good. A few pages in, there's a graph. It looks like this one here. So if you see right there, the little box in the middle is showing right there at the median. Okay, buyers, they want to get the most amount of house for the least amount of money, and sellers, they want to get the most amount of house or the most amount of money for the least amount of time. You have to be right there within that graph in order to capture the most buyers, because what's going to happen is buyers just aren't going to be there to pay those prices if they think that you're still overpriced. If they think that your neighbor, they pay the price for your neighbor, the buyer doesn't care that your neighbor sold his house for more than it's worth. The buyer doesn't care that their new neighbor is $100,000 upside down in their house, right? They don't want to be like that person. So the buyer's not there to buy. So when you're pricing a home for sale, you want to be right there in that market. When you're looking to buy homes, you want to try to catch those people who are down here rather than right here. So go on the market, look at those houses that have been there for 30 days. They're still really good houses. I actually have one that I'm working with right now. He chose another agent instead of myself. And I was just talking to him today about coming over to me to let me list his house because he's in that same ballpark. He listed his house up, it was like 789. He did a price drop down to 759. 54 days ago, when his house went on the market, it was listed at 759, probably was sold. But now we're going to tell him to drop the price of him. He's going to shift agents. He needs to leave. He's driving his family to San Diego this weekend because his family has to be where he's going to go to work. He's going to come back because his house already sold. Right? That is the cost of this game right here. What your neighbor did, what you think your home is worth versus what the market is telling you what your home is worth. Only a buyer who puts a piece of paper in front of you, says I have a approved loan or I have cash, is going to be able to tell you what your home is. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Elias.
Hello, everybody. So, thank you guys. That was really awesome. I don't have any fancy charts, so just kind of go with me right now. So I'm going to be talking about four things. Four things I'm going to be talking about is the time frame for a seller, and then what we do as an agent to prepare the property for sale, and then what you need to do to prepare it yourself. For example, so what you would do is you would fix the property and then just get everything sold so you can get the most for your client. Okay? And then the fourth thing is what happens when you get a buyer. The first thing is the time frame for a seller. So as Ricky mentioned, you want to sell by December, we need to be interviewing agents right now. And so with that being said, you would want to have an agent walk by, walk through and look at the property and figure out what will need to be updated. So then you could do get the most for your investment. And the second thing is you want to interview agents and have a good track record and someone you feel comfortable with, because we're going to be spending a lot of time together, right? And so for the third thing is, if you want to move out state, we also have a great referral network. They'll be able to help you guys with that as well. Okay? And so then what we do to get the property sold, we're going to get some data, for example, what we're talking about, and then sit down and figure out a great competitive price, get that property sold within that time frame. And another thing that we're going to do is we're going to get a photographer to optimize the first impression for you guys. Okay. And the third thing is we list houses typically on Thursday. And the reason behind that is to make sure that we get all the ads and the marketing, hit the websites that weekend so we get the biggest pool of buyers. And our team also has a listing manager, an inside sales agent for buyers, as well as a database manager, marketing listing to 40,000. We have heard that. And the third thing is things to do to get your property ready. So have you guys heard of confirmation bias?
Yeah.
So confirmation bias, what that is, a person will find facts to support the person question to get something. So this relating to real estate, someone's gonna walk up to the house and it's cute. You're gonna be like, oh, this is a really, really cute house. And they're gonna walk inside and they're gonna look at things that support their very first impression, right? And this also goes to downside. The house is not looking very nice. You're gonna go inside and keep pointing things out that need fixed. That's already gonna lose some buyers for you. So with that being said, curb appeal is really, really important. So with curb appeal, you want to do some landscaping, you want to trim bushes, add some grass, add some mulch. And then if the siding has some algae or mildew, you want to pressure wash. And then if the welcome mat is a little bit old, right, you want to try to switch that out, get a newer one. And then also if the front door is a little bit old, clean it up, make it a little bit. And then the other thing is you want to be, there's two houses, right? Same exact house, same exact neighborhood. If one has way more stuff in the house and the other one has has more space, sorry, you're gonna go to the one that has more space because you're gonna think, hey, this house is way more empty, right? They have way more space, even the same house. And so the other thing too is you want to brighten up the house. And we're gonna go back to the same example, because buyers can do is they go off the feeling. So you go to one house that's dark and gloomy, you're gonna get that feeling you don't want to be in there, right? If you go to a house that's nice and bright, you're gonna be like, oh, this house is so bright. And actually, Anton, he's actually going through a remodel, and it's funny, we hear about it all the time at the office. So for example, he had the kitchen, the island, and the countertops, they were black, and they switched them out to white countertops and white island, get popped. And those little things like that can go really a long way. For example, let's say we have some dark curtains, switch them out for some lighter curtains. If you have some dark paint, maybe do a white paint over that. I just got some paint, guys. And then also you want to, this is kind of hard for sellers, you want to try to personalize. And what happens is when a buyer walks into the property, they're trying to envision themselves in this property. For example, that's where my couch is going to be, that's where he's going to be. And when they see photos of a family in there, they're going to look at that and say, they're not going to be able to envision themselves as well as it was. That's perfect.
It feels like you're intruding into somebody else's space when you walk in and you see pictures of their kids laughing and like sneaking into this random person's house versus like you walk in and it's completely depersonalized and it feels like you just walked into like an Airbnb. So you can immediately feel comfortable.
And then so the last thing is what we do after we get a buyer. So congratulations, got a buyer, you're under contract. And so what happens is our team, we have a transaction coordinator that will make sure to work on all the administrative stuff. So you have us as agents to help you and just focus on you, answer any questions and just any support that you may need. And in conclusion, there's a lot of moving parts that come to buying and selling a house, right? As you can tell, in our job simply is just to help you get it done easy and get it done as simple as possible. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.